Nick, 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 do-wop, 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 wah, 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 Nick, 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 Nickelodeon.
This video is brought to you by Patreon. Patreon! Now that's what I call the 80s. Well, look at that. Knacks has finished up the first decade of Nickelodeon's existence, at a pace of roughly 2 Nickelodeon years to one of my years, which means I'll catch up with the channel sometime around, 2038 or so. God, I'll be 50. In any case, this is a good moment to back up, reflect, and maybe do a bit of house cleaning. When Knacks started, I was implementing addendums for given years, presenting additional footage and making corrections. But I started to find this format unwieldy, and I was often discovering footage and errors for years I had already done addendums for. What am I supposed to do? Do more addendums for that year? That's the problem with history. It's granular, tiny parts brushing up against each other, and a lot of it will slip through your fingers completely if you try to collect it. I can try to pick up the grains of Nickelodeon history I missed, but at some point it's just diminishing returns. So I dropped the addendum format, but I do still want to have a final bit of cleanup as we switch from 80s Nickelodeon to 90s Nickelodeon, especially since 80s Nickelodeon has been a pretty underrepresented part of the channel's history. Almost all projects concerning the history of Nickelodeon focuses exclusively on the 1990s, the quote-unquote golden era of Nicktoons and sitcoms, Nickelodeon Studios, and Nickelodeon Magazine. And sure, the views were high, the money was rolling in, and it provided the channel with some of its longest lasting and most profitable properties. But none of these things sprung up overnight, but rather were founded on a decades-long foundation of experiments, mistakes, and other less well-remembered successes, all of which was just as interesting as what the channel was doing during the Clinton administration. Nickelodeon started in 1979 as a spin-off of a weird interactive cable experiment, when everything cable was doing was a weird experiment. No one had done a dedicated children's channel. Children's television itself was kind of in a tricky spot as it waited for the Reagan administration to gut FCC regulations so it could turn into a toy commercial factory. There wasn't a rule book for Nickelodeon to use, so everything it did was important. Every show set a tone and expectation for the channel, a statement of, this is what we're about. At least right now. Do you want to watch this? In many ways, 80s Nick is more important than 90s Nick, because without this decade of experimentation, false starts, and minor hits, the channel would never have had the momentum to produce the high-quality content that now defines it. 90s Nick may have been the home run, but 80s Nick was all the spring training it took to hit that home run. I hope I've demonstrated that. I hope that, if I suddenly drop dead tomorrow and this is the last video I ever do on the topic, I would have expanded the understanding of the channel beyond just the golden era, given you a greater appreciation of the channel's first decade, and helped you realize that history is not a grand narrative, but a random accumulation of small decisions. There is no great turn for Nickelodeon's fortunes. Some will point to the transition of Cy Schneider to Jerry Laybourne as the channel president, but this was hardly flicking a light switch. There were just as many dud shows under Laybourne as there was under Schneider, some of their own making, like Turkey Television, and some truly bizarre acquisitions. Hanging In was under Laybourne. So was National Geographic Explorer and 16 Cinema and the later seasons of Mr. Wizard's World, just as much green vegetable shows as those traditionally credited to Schneider. And of course, that narrative suggests that Cy Schneider never did anything right during his tenure, which I don't agree with. After all, it was under Schneider that we got You Can't Do That on Television, which, regardless of my subjective opinion on it, was the channel's first major success. The show that gave the channel its iconic green slime. A show that even the staunchest Nickelodeon Only Mattered in the 90s projects have to acknowledge. And this was only a year into Schneider's run. And there were plenty of other shows that I find to be good or even great television during the Silver Ball era. Dusty's Treehouse, Livewire, The Adventures of Black Beauty, Today's Special, Mr. Wizard's World, and the biggest surprise out of this entire project, Vegetable Soup, a fantastic children's show about race and culture that was not just ahead of its time, but still feels ahead of our time. Many shows during the so-called green vegetable era weren't actually educational. Some were dramatic works, often genre works like The Tomorrow People, Adventures in Rainbow Country, and The Third Eye, plus special delivery, which allowed a wide range of alternative content like concerts, documentaries, movies, and shorter runs of other shows. And a lot of the actual business decisions that affected the channel were due to factors outside of channel operations. The failure of Atari and the collapse of the video game market put Warner Amax in financial trouble, and ultimately led to the channel's sale to Viacom. The overnight success of MTV resulted in MTV Networks, which caused Cy Schneider to leave Nickelodeon because he wasn't comfortable with the newer, hip 1980s sensibilities for television. While we'll never be 100% certain what happened behind the scenes, from the interviews and documents we do have, Schneider never seemed at risk of being fired because he was doing the job assigned to him: maintain a loss leader for Warner's cable system. Now, you shouldn't do this, but if you wanted to pinpoint Nickelodeon's ascent to a single decision, one change between Schneider and Laybourne that guaranteed the channel's long-term success, it wouldn't be in any single show, not even the wildly successful Double Dare, and it wouldn't be in the creation of Nick at Night or Nick Jr., but it was simply a choice of management structure. In the Silver Ball days, all departments reported to Schneider, but they never talked to each other. There was no collaboration. Laybourne brought everyone together, got everybody in the building talking with each other and contributing ideas, with an open door policy that resulted in the secretary helping develop Double Dare, the channel's first game show and the biggest show on cable television for a time, and Hey Dude, the channel's first sitcom. This open collaboration extended to the audience as well, with numerous test screenings, focus groups, and public surveys to help assess what youngsters were looking for on the TV, as well as discussions with child advocacy groups like Action for Children's Television. Nickelodeon became a company with a massive suggestions box that actually read the suggestions, and that is, in my opinion, the most defining thing about Laybourne's entire run on the channel: a desire for everyone to have a voice. And this led to things like creator-driven content and many wild and exciting ideas. The lesson of 80s Nickelodeon was, among other things, let all voices be heard, let all ideas in, and we'll work it from there. But even with this, it still took several years for Nickelodeon to gain the momentum for 90s Nick. My point is, well, this stuff is complicated and messy, and it's that complication, that mess, that I find most fascinating. Look, I'm a 90s kid. I am the target demographic of golden age Nickelodeon nostalgia, but yet I have found my exploration of the era before mine, the era of shows I largely never watched, incredibly satisfying. Knowing how we got to where we are is satisfying for me. I hope it's been satisfying for you. So before we get into 90s Nickelodeon, let's take a look at some of the smaller elements of 80s Nickelodeon. Things that perhaps weren't worth a video on their own, but nonetheless played their part in the weird, inconsistent history of the first cable network for kids.
I'm bringing it home. The shirt's Texas.
Mike, 504.
Now there's one heck of an athlete. National champion junior Olympic decathlon, 6,056 points. 3 new personal bests, 100 meters, javelin, and pole vault. And our other competitors? Pete Zuccarini in 6th place with 4,993 points. Cam Miller took 5th with 5,113 points. And Mike Keevens in 4th with 5,207 points. Steve Rollins took 3rd with 5,333 points. John Owen came back to 2nd place with 5,681 points. And of course, Mike Smierziak from Schertz, Texas, the national champion. And if Mike keeps working the way he did for the Junior Olympics, I'll bet we see him in the Olympics one day to come. And we'll see you the next time on Reggie Jackson's World of Sports.
We've talked a lot about the changes in Nickelodeon's visuals, going from a winking mime to a silver ball to an orange splat, but the one thing we barely touched on is the voice of Nickelodeon, the announcer in the channel's promotional material. Somebody's gotta tell us when Against the Odds is on, after all. Having a regular announcer voice allows for a commonality among all of Nickelodeon's shows. Having the same guy talking about Lassie and the adventures of Little Koala tie the shows together into a singular whole. The very first announcer was Phil Tonkin, who had been announcing for radio since the mid-1940s, which felt appropriate for the old-fashioned aesthetic Nickelodeon started with in 1979, what with it being named after turn-of-the-century exhibition theaters and using a 50s pop song in their advertising. Humorist Gene Shepard once described Tonkin's voice as a combination of King Kong, the organ at Westminster Cathedral, and wind whistling through Mammoth Cave.
We took everything that was wrong with children's television and got rid of it. We kept everything that was good about it and made it better. The result is Nickelodeon, the young people's satellite network.
Alas, we still don't have a credit for who voiced the Silver Ball era, but while we're in these early days, there was the Nickelodeon mime. Obviously not one of the voices of Nickelodeon because, you know, mime, but he was the channel's first mascot. The Nickelodeon mime was played by John Schwartz. I actually had an email conversation with Schwartz some years ago. When we shot the original IDs, Nickelodeon wasn't showing in the New York market, and I never saw them. I received a copy of the sessions on 3x4 tape, but the last time I saw them was after editing a 1984 commercial reel. Rita Nachman, who was an original member of the Claude Kipnis Mime Theater, was a teacher of mine before I joined Claude's performing company. Rita's boyfriend at the time was working for Warner and asked her to do the mime IDs. Rita thought it would be better to use a male, so she called me and she directed. However, any ID that was just hands was Rita. We spent 2 days shooting the different spots. I didn't use whiteface to do mime. This was a trait of the Kipnis Mime Theater. Claude didn't see the need to put on clown white. We could make our complexion paler and accentuate the eyes and mouth to enhance our expression. Schwartz is still active today with his Vinnie Varelli character, a humorous keynote speaker that you can hire to MC your business conferences. Of course, the big announcer voice, the one that spawns all the "I can't believe you didn't mention" comments, was Wendell Craig, who was the voice of the channel from 1984 all the way to 1996.
Nickelodeon brings you Kids Only Weekend. Kids Only All Day Saturday. Kids Only All Day Sunday. All kids shows and only kids shows all weekend long.
Kids Only Weekend.
Getting his start in college radio and eventually moving to commercial voiceovers, Wendell Craig's voice is the soundtrack of many childhoods, letting you know that Heathcliff was next, followed by Looney Tunes.
Wake up! Dennis and Lassie are on early enough for you to catch both of them.
Gee, nobody told us.
Well, now you know, so spread the word.
Dennis, you haven't even started your breakfast. Where are you off to?
First, it's Lassie at 7:30 a.m. Then at 8, join Dennis and his friends.
Thank you for the correct time.
Now, doesn't Nickelodeon give you a good feeling to wake up with?
You bet. It gives you a real bang-up Cracker Jack feeling.
It all starts at 7:30, 6:30 Central. Weekdays on Nickelodeon.
Sadly, Craig passed away relatively recently, on July 12, 2020, at the age of 80. Even if we someday forget the name, we'll never forget the voice.
Enough.
The movie is Dune, based on the best-selling novel from the 60s, and an extravaganza that science fiction fans have waited 20 years to see. And the man behind this former #1 bestseller is the author, 63-year-old Frank Herbert. Books to the Dune series. The basis of his success is his in-depth research. His first story required 6 years of painstaking investigation. However, the title came to him instantly.
It popped in my head one day, just like a headline. Dune. And I had it. That was it.
Due to the complexity of the story, 2 previous film scripts failed, and it was not until director David Lynch invited Herbert to the sets in Mexico City that he truly believed the story would make it to the screen.
The difficulty is actually building the sets, creating the reality that before you could build cheaply in your head. Oh my God, the Great Hall is tremendous, it really is. I'm happy. Everything I've seen, I see Dune.
It was Lynch's task to translate Dune into a screenplay, and as a result, he and Herbert developed a special relationship.
He's been more of a friend and a supporter than anything else, which is the most important thing that he could be.
I'm not one of these authors who sits there.
When Herbert officially began the production, he already had a feeling that Dune, the movie, would be true to his work, and that his fans would leave the theater with the same feeling.
I want them to feel that they have been to Dune.
On April 6, 1980, Nickelodeon premiered Special Delivery, which was essentially a place to put whatever miscellaneous content the channel could get a hold of, but didn't fit into their other package shows like Pinwheel, By the Way, Hocus Focus, Children's Classics, and First Row Features. It was basically the channel's junk drawer, a place to put little odds and ends that don't fit into other spaces. Now, when it came to TV listings, Special Delivery rarely got listed under its own name. Instead, what they were airing would get listed. It's not Special Delivery, it's David Johansen in concert. It's not Special Delivery, it's The Adventures of Dinosaur Badlands. The problem with this, however, was that it wasn't the only show not getting listed under its name. Throughout the 80s, there were what you might call spin-offs from Special Delivery, shows that took some of the type of content you would see there and focus it elsewhere. But since this was the kind of stuff you'd expect to see on Special Delivery, and the show names weren't listed, I just assumed these spots were Special Delivery. We covered one of these in a previous addendum, Nick's Family Picks, premiering on June 7th, 1981 and running till April 25th, 1982. This was just a dedicated spot on the channel for feature-length films. But then there was also The Saturday Concert, which premiered on June 9th, 1984 and ran until May 25th, 1985. As you can imagine, it's just concert footage, which had regularly aired on Special Delivery from the beginning, but still, technically, a different show, and one I didn't do a video on. A show I did do a video on was 16 Cinema, which also fits into this trend. After-school specials played on Special Delivery a lot, and then they got moved to their own dedicated time slot, essentially spreading this filler content thinner and trying to repackage it to make it seem new and exciting. Hey, if you got empty time slots, you gotta fill it with something. It was only through the archiving efforts of sites like Nick and More that we even have names for these shows. I'd argue they're not worth making full Knacks episodes on. There's nothing here that isn't already covered in the Special Delivery and 16 Cinema episodes, but they're definitely worth a mention for completionist's sake.
Okay, so Alan, you are the plaintiff or the accuser, and Danny, you're the defendant or the accused. So tell me in your own words, Alan, exactly what happened from the start.
Well, I went off on holiday just for the week.
Right.
So I asked Danny if he would just go in for me.
Into where?
Into the news
The news
agent
agent,
for
and
the
take
paper.
over your paper round, right?
Yeah, which he did. And he will be getting paid out of my own money.
Right, the money that you'd have got paid, he's getting paid,
Yeah.
you're doing your job, I see.
Well, when I got back off my holiday, well, I got back on the Sunday night and I went in there first thing, Monday morning.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got in there, they told me I had the sack because he didn't do his job properly.
So listen, when they said to you, listen, I'm afraid that because you got your mate and it was hopeless, you got the sack, how did that make you feel?
Well, I felt very angry at the time because I don't get any pocket money. I have to work for my money.
So that's why you brought him to kids' court?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Danny says to you, take over, and you make a mess of it.
Yeah, well, I did make a mess of it because I'm accident prone, you see. Nothing seems to go my way.
Here on Knacks, we've been framing the channel through its television shows, but that wasn't the only thing they aired. Throughout the 80s and the 90s, Nickelodeon was awash with short content between the shows. This was doubly true during the commercial-free era, when you had to have some sort of interstitial to space the shows out correctly. Some of these shorts, like Banana Man or Curious George, got enough promotion through TV listings that I consider them actual shows, but there's plenty more shorts where those came from. Many people have wanted me to talk about this, and I toyed around with the idea of doing a dedicated episode, but it never really came together in a satisfying way. So let's talk about them here. No way I can present a comprehensive list of interstitial shorts. Many of them were just one and dones, and outside of TV recordings, it's hard to confirm what actually aired on the channel and when. There's probably a short you love that I won't mention, but here are 5 common reoccurring highlights. Produced by the English animation company King Rollo Films, who you may know as the people behind Maisie, which Knacks will be covering when we get to 1999, barely running longer than 10 seconds a pop, What the Devil is a simple premise about a mischievous little imp silently frittering about, messing with things or things messing with him. A lot of the short's charm comes from its cutout animation style and the character design of Watt. A sassy devil man wearing kinky boots. I think the Powerpuff Girls may have taken a few notes. A hippopotamus boy joins anthropomorphic animals while playing sports. Hijinks ensue, in the spirit of Animalympics, but creating far fewer furries. Sports Cartoons was made by married couple Derek Lamb and Janet Perlman, who also made shorts for Sesame Street, as well as the excellent title sequence for PBS's Mystery.
Picture pages, time to get your picture pages, time to get your crayons and your pencils. Picture pages, open up your picture pages, time to watch Bill Cosby do a picture page with you.
There you are, and here I am.
Oh boy, I guess we had to talk about him at some point. Okay, so this one has some history to it. Picture Pages was created by Julius Oleynik, an entrepreneur in education-related businesses like computer learning. Originating in Pittsburgh, Picture Pages began life as a franchisable television show for preschoolers with an interactive gimmick. Parents could pick up activity books from participating stores, usually supermarkets, and the show would walk the youngsters through a few pages of that activity book a day. In 1978, the Picture Pages concept was purchased by Captain Kangaroo, bringing it to a national audience. While originally hosted by the captain himself, the segment was soon given to stand-up comedian, actor, and rapist Bill Cosby. Cosby had spent the 1970s focusing on children's television. Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids was still in production, and he had spent a few years working with the Children's Television Workshop on The Electric Company. So seeing him on Captain Kangaroo was pretty much in line with his career at the time. Captain Kangaroo ended in 1984, and it was decided that the Picture Pages segments could be syndicated out separately. Like the Curious George shorts, Picture Pages started off as part of Pinwheel, before splitting off into its own thing as an interstitial. I know many people who are nostalgic for Picture Pages on Nickelodeon, host notwithstanding, but I have to assume there were diminishing returns as they stopped giving away the activity books. Well, I hope you enjoyed Picture Pages as a kid, because you really can't enjoy them now.
He was just an ordinary kid, until that fateful day when he accidentally swung over the bar and learned he had incredible powers beyond those of any superhero.
Where are my parents?
He had become Inside-Out Boy. He couldn't fly, or even leap tall buildings. But what he could do, gross out adults, made him a hero to kids the world over.
Excuse me.
Inside-Out Boy, what you want in a hero.
Guts.
From the network that's got what you want, Nickelodeon.
Barely slipping in under the wire, with the first short produced in 1989, Inside-Out Boy was created by Scott Webb and Will McRobb. The titular character is something of a superhero, because his gross form disgusts any adult he comes across. This is fun, but hardly the most important shorts Will McRobb made that year.
If you're gonna play some street bowling, don't use your dad's best ball. Once, when he caught us using his brand new Revco Dominator, he got so mad he chased us into the next county.
The Adventures of Pete and Pete.
Starring Pete, Pete's brother Pete, and introducing Ellen as Pete's girlfriend.
Look, you're a girl and you're a friend, and that's it!
Today's adventure, what would you do for $1?
We knew this kid, Carl Slurm, who ran around his backyard singing to himself like he was on a highlight film. Yeah! He seemed like a dink, but he knew Kung Fu. So we invited him to play. What would you do for $1?
Wow. It's humiliating. It's the sport of Danish kings.
Pete's the world champion, but he still smells like liverwurst. Actually, after 2 years of playing, it's unclear what Pete won't do for $1.
We'll talk about their production at length when Knacks gets to the full show, but I would be remiss to talk about 80s Nickelodeon shorts and not bring up Pete and Pete, the day-to-day adventures of two brothers, Mom and Dad, and the plate in Mom's head. In retrospect, a symbolic changing of the guard from 80s Nick to 90s Nick. Contests and sweepstakes are an exciting way to connect with your young audience, and even in these early years, Nickelodeon had a number of great ones. One of the first was the Slime In Sweepstakes, beginning in 1984, a tie-in contest for You Can't Do That on Television and sponsored by Sunkist. You send in your postcard for a chance to appear on the show to get slimed.
Jennifer, wasn't it easy to win?
I don't know.
Yes, you do. You took a postcard, remember?
I don't know.
Don't you think this is getting just a little ridiculous?
I don't know.
All right, Jennifer. Can't you say something else?
Yeah, Nickelodeon is the place where only kids win.
Being on Nickelodeon is pretty dang cool. But you know what's also cool? Having Nickelodeon come to you. Starting in 1988, we saw the first annual Nickelodeon Takes Over Your School sweepstakes, where one lucky school would be visited by Mark Summers, Mr. Wizard, and the cast of You Can't Do That on Television.
Nothing can stop them. No school is safe.
Nickelodeon wants to come and take over your school.
Don't enter. Whatever you do not want to enter.
And we'll make it a day you'll never forget.
You do not want to enter.
You just ask any kid at West Utica Elementary School what we did when we turned their school upside down.
There was slime everywhere. Yuck!
Yeah, and Mark Summers was here. Mr. Wizard, don't just sit there, kids. Bark. Plus, we had a blow-up party with a real-life rock band.
For a chance to win $1,000 and have Nick take over your school, just send a postcard to Nick Takes Over Your School Contest, P.O. Box 9046, Smithtown, New York 11787. Include your name, address, age, and phone number. You can be sure school will never be the same again. From the place where only kids win, Nickelodeon. Nick Takes Over Your School is brought to you by Post Pebbles and Honeycomb.
They ran this contest for a while, all the way to 2001. So of course the Nickelodeon cast of characters changed with the times. There were also musical guests like Criss Cross and Britney Spears. Now, did I submit my own school once or twice? No. More like 12 times. Also, odd little side note, they made a TV show based on the sweepstakes in Australia.
Join the host with the most, Naomi. School, it ain't gonna be the same.
We'll be playing all your favorite games.
Dog poo and a dead snail.
And you asked for it, the legendary Test the Teacher. All your favourite bits and a whole lot of gross stuff. Nick Takes Over Your School, Monday to Friday in Savo on Nickelodeon.
If any of my Aussie watchers want to do Knacks Australia, you have my blessing. A little less consistent, but nonetheless traditional, was Nick or Treat, sweepstakes the channel would run in October to celebrate Halloween, beginning in 1985.
So, you thought this was going to be just an ordinary Halloween. Well, this Halloween, Nickelodeon's giving away candy and a whole lot more as we unleash
Nick or Treat!
the first annual Nick or Treat Halloween giveaway. Get a pen, get a piece of paper, get your two best friends, and get your parents.
Parents?
Because you're spending Halloween weekend in Hollywood. You'll fly first class to the home of the movies, live it up in the posh Sheraton Premier Hotel. You'll have a chauffeur-driven limousine and $500 to spend any way you want. Then,
welcome to the Berman Studio. And I'm Tom Berman.
Hollywood's wizard of special makeup effects on movies like Star Trek 3 and Close Encounters will transform you into almost anything. Imagine a Halloween costume so fantastic even your mother won't know you.
Nick or Treat! Nick or Treat!
Plus, you and your friends will each get a Viewmaster Gremlin gift set and your weight in delicious milk chocolate M&M. Melt in your mouth, not in your costume candy.
Nick or Treat was all over the place with prizes. One year you could win a Count Duckula comic book. The next year you could win a trip to Arizona. Not a specific city in Arizona, just, Arizona. And sometimes it wasn't just a mail-in contest, but a full-blown television event where you could call in and win prizes. Nick or Treat ran up until 2002, and there's so much weird variety in it that I'm almost tempted to make a whole video about it. Maybe. No promises. Slime In sweepstakes, Nickelodeon Takes Over Your School, Nick or Treat, these were all a lot of fun. But there was one contest that every kid wanted to win. For my money, the crown jewel of Nickelodeon sweepstakes was the Super Toy Run.
On your mark, get ready, set, win! The Toy Run is back, and it's bigger and better than ever because Toys R Us has teamed up with Nickelodeon to bring you the second annual Super Toy Run, the contest that pits you against the clock. Grand prize, you get 5 minutes to run through Toys R Us grabbing every toy you want, every toy you can get your hands on, and every toy you grab is yours to keep. And you're not finished. You'll pick an extra $1,000 in toys for Easter seals and get a luxurious Hollywood vacation for 3 with chauffeur-driven limousine, 3 days and nights at the Sheraton Premier Hotel, and a VIP tour of Universal Studios. To enter, get an entry blank at the Toy Run display at Toys R Us, or send a postcard with your name, address, age, and phone to Toy Run, P.O. Box 2726, New York, New York 10116. Entries must be received by December 5th. 100 second prize winners get a $25 Toys R Us gift certificate. 200 third prize winners get a Toys R Us t-shirt. Enter and win the Super Toy Run. It's all yours from Toys R Us and Nickelodeon, the place where only kids win.
5 minutes to run through a Toys R Us, and everything you can grab, you keep. Essentially what every kid ever wanted to do when stepping into a Toys R Us. Or, maybe a KB Toys. Grab a shopping cart and go. Beginning in 1984, this was the longest running Nickelodeon sweepstakes by a mile, going all the way to 2018. And then, Toys R Us kind of went away. I don't want to grow up. This should have been the sweepstakes to get its own show, a full kiddie version of Supermarket Sweep. Having this many high-profile contests helped maintain the illusion of relationship between Nickelodeon and its viewer base. Nickelodeon wants you, yes you, Kevin, to write down all relevant demographic information about yourself onto a postcard, and we will totally throw you a party at your school and put you on TV and give you a bajillion toys. We promise. I'm phrasing this a little cynically, but it is important to remember that as much as Knacks celebrates Nickelodeon and the shows they've made, they are a company trying to make money. There were some years where all 4 of these sweepstakes were running at different times, so if you want to make sure you don't miss one, you gotta sit through all those commercial breaks. Oh cool, the Super Toy Run is coming up. And also I'm hungry for Golden Grams. There's obviously more we could talk about. More shorts, more one-off specials, more quirks of Nickelodeon's growing pains. We really could be here all day. But the 90s await, and I'm eager to get to them. so long as we leave 80s Nickelodeon discourse better than we found it. More fleshed out, more nuanced, and more represented.
Nick, 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 Nickelodeon. Nick, 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 Nickelodeon.
Next time, it's the 90s, baby. Well, it's 1990, which isn't the most exciting year for the channel, and we're kicking it off with the mostly forgotten replacement for Total Panic. Thank you all for watching. If you'd like to support Knacks and other Pop-Arena projects, consider contributing to my Patreon. Every dollar goes to production values, research materials, and an entire gallon of gas. You can also support the channel by liking the video, leaving a comment, subscribing, hitting that bell icon for notifications, following me on Twitter, sending a one-time donation through PayPal or Coffee, and sharing Knacks with all your friends. I'll see you later, and remember, Black Lives Matter.